10 rides that are insanely dangerous. Number 10. Mission Space. Mission Space opened in the future world at Disney's Epcot theme park in 2003. It's a centrifugal motion simulator that spins riders around at incredible speeds to replicate what astronauts go through during a spaceflight. As you can imagine, the forces that passengers endure on this ride can be extreme, and as a result, there have been a number of injuries. People have complained of experiencing back pain, chest pain, neck pain, breathlessness, and breathing difficulties after going on the ride. And there have also been 2 fatalities, one of which was a 49-year-old woman who suffered a stroke, and the other was a 4-year-old boy who passed out due to an undiagnosed heart condition. The number of injuries became so significant that a new version of the simulated ride was released a few years later, aimed at those wanting to experiencing it, but at a lower level of insanity. And since then, the dangers have, thankfully, been reduced. Number 9. Superman Ride of Steel. Superman Ride of Steel is a steel track hypercoaster at the Six Flags theme park in Darien Lake, New York. It was built in 1999, and with a maximum height of 208 feet, a drop length of 205 feet, and a maximum speed of 73 miles per hour, it's certainly worthy of the superhero after which it was originally named. There's also an identical version at the park in New England, and while both are incredibly fun and draw visitors from around the world, both have also seen more than their fair share of accidents. In 2001, the New England ride crashed, which injured 22 people, and in 2004, a man was thrown from one of the carts into the ground and died instantly. On the one at Darien Lake, a passenger was thrown from the ride and severely injured just a few months after it happened, and in 2011, a handicapped rider fell to his death. Each time something happened, the rides were closed and adapted to prevent anything like it occurring again. It just makes you wonder whether they've covered all the possible dangers now, or whether they'll soon be learning from yet another tragedy. Number 8. Space Journey, Shenzhen, China. Space Journey is a space shuttle simulation ride at the overseas Chinatown East theme park in Shenzhen, China. It's made up of 12 spaceship cabins, each of which has 4 seats that spin around. It was one of the most popular attractions in the park. And while most rides are designed to feel somewhat risky to increase the thrill level, in 2010 the world saw just how dangerous this ride actually was. Due to a mechanical problem, the ride lost its balance, and the cabins were slammed against the ground several times while 48 people were on board. This unfortunately killed 6 of them and severely injured 10. What's most surprising is that this happened just over a week after a safety check was conducted on the ride, and raised questions about how safe any coaster in China actually was. Would you dare set foot on it now, knowing how badly things can go wrong? Number 7. Mindbender, Canadian Mall. Mindbender opened at the Galaxyland amusement park at the West Edmonton Mall, Canada, in March of 1986, and at the time was billed as the world's safest roller coaster. Featuring twisting drops, a double upward helix, and 3 loops, it remains the largest indoor triple looping coaster in the world. But its reputation as the safest has had to be reevaluated. The biggest incident that took place here happened in 1986, just 3 months after its opening ceremony. The 4th car detached from the train, failed to clear the final loop, and slid backwards along the track before swinging and smashing into a concrete pillar. While this was happening, the safety lap bars disengaged, and passengers were thrown 25 feet to the ground. 3 people died, 1 was critically injured, and a further 19 had to seek medical treatment. The ride reopened the following year after a complete redesign of the cars and safety precautions, and is still in operation to this day. Even though no serious incidents have happened since the 80s, it still more than deserves its reputation as one of the most insanely dangerous rides in the world. Number 6. Batman the Ride. Batman the Ride is a 2,700-foot-long inverted steel coaster at Six Flags, Georgia. Reaching speeds of up to 50 miles per hour, and with a maximum height of 100 feet, it's a thrill from start to finish, and is easily one of the most popular coasters at the park. It was opened in 1997, and since then millions of people have experienced what it feels like to be the Caped Crusader by, at first, walking through the gates to Gotham and entering the Batcave, before boarding the trains that hang from an overhead track. The ride designers used every bit of space available to them to their advantage, but they pushed things a little too much, which resulted in several injuries and deaths. The danger from this ride doesn't actually risk those on board, but instead it's the threat to passers-by that is insanely dangerous. It reaches such high speeds and travels so low to the ground that anyone walking past at the wrong time was headed for trouble. In 2002, a staff member was kicked in the head by a passenger on the train whizzing by and died instantly. While in 2008, the same thing happened to a young boy who had snuck into an area he shouldn't have been in. The park had already taken precautions to prevent people from accidentally walking into harm's way, but it wasn't enough to save these two people and could possibly happen again. Number 5. Derby Racer Roller Coaster. The Derby Racer roller coaster was the pride and joy of Revere Beach, Massachusetts when it was opened in 1911. It was the latest design of a coaster at the time and saw two trains race each other along parallel tracks over a figure-of-8 design. When it opened, it was the second largest roller coaster in the world, but it soon became known for its less than exemplary safety record. Just a few months after it had begun operation, a man was thrown from the ride and suffered severe injuries. In 1918, a man was killed after being thrown from one train in front of the other. In 1923, a couple were severely injured, and in 1929, another rider was thrown clear of one of the trains to his death. This last incident resulted in a huge lawsuit against the coaster's operators and actually led to it being closed and replaced in 1936. By the time it was shut, it had become known as the Ride of Death, and as well as the 3 fatalities, countless others had suffered injuries as a result of its design. Before we move on, be sure to subscribe to Top 5s with notifications on. Number 4. Fujin Raijin To. Fujin Raijin To was a 6-car roller coaster at the Expoland amusement park near Osaka, Japan, and had been thrilling visitors since being opened during the International Exposition in 1969. It was one of 8 coasters on the site, but this one was unusual and featured a rare design where riders actually stood up throughout. The danger that this ride presented, however, led to the entire venue closing down in 2007. In May of that year, one of the trains derailed, which killed a university student and injured 19 other people. The investigation that followed found that the accident had happened because of a broken axle, and that none of the axles on the ride had been replaced for at least 15 years. In the aftermath, similar cracks were found on the axles of other trains on the ride, and the park took a serious hit to its reputation. It reopened in December 2007, but by 2009 it had closed because of a lack of customers. It's a sad example that shows how it's not just the fastest rides or the ones with the most inversions that can potentially be dangerous, and that if operators don't pay enough attention to maintenance, any ride can become lethal. Number 3. The Human Trebuchet. There are lots of hurdles any ride operator has to go through to allow paying members of the public to try out their designs. And there's a ride that was built in Somerset, England that just shows why the rules and regulations are necessary. Called the Human Trebuchet, it was built by 2 students who had no experience with building rides and decided they could make a replica of a medieval weapon used to attack castles and then charge people to be strapped into it. It was at the Middlemore Water Park, and for the price of about $50, riders were flung 70 feet into the air and then landed in a net about the size of a tennis court. Of course, this design was completely reckless, and there were only about 50 launches every year. In 1999, a woman fell from the net and fractured her pelvis, an accident that was caught on camera. And then in 2002, a student died after missing the net completely. The ride was dismantled soon after this and has never been seen again. Number 2. The Perilous Plunge. The Perilous Plunge was a water slide ride at Knott's Berry Farm in California that opened in September of 2000. It had 24 passenger boats, each of which would be towed up to a height of 121 feet before turning around and then hurtling down a 150-foot chute into a splash pool. It was a world record slide when it opened, as it was the tallest and steepest slide ever built. This, though, led to engineers pushing the design to its limits, and they created something that was very dangerous. In 2001, despite wearing a seatbelt and with the lap bar lowered over her, a rider fell from her boat when it was at the top, and she instantly died. A complete renovation was ordered, which discovered stress fractures in the left chain, which at one point snapped when a boat was being lifted. Luckily, on that occasion, there were other safety measures in place to protect those on board, but the ride was eventually shut down for good in 2012. Number 1. The Alpine Slide. Action Park in New Jersey became renowned as being the world's most dangerous amusement park because of a series of poorly designed and rarely maintained rides. But there was one that was particularly dangerous called the Alpine Slide. This 2,700-foot-long attraction saw people slide down the side of a mountain through banked turns as they sat on small sleds with a lever that allowed them to control the speed themselves. In practice, though, these controls only allowed you to go extremely slow or extremely fast, and as you can imagine, most people chose the fast option. This led to endless injuries with people being flung from the side, and in 1980 became the first ride at the park to cause a death when someone hit their head on the ground. According to records, in 1984 and 1985, there were 14 bone fractures and 26 head injuries caused by the ride, which is insane. With such a terrible safety record, it was undoubtedly one of the most dangerous rides to ever be built. Would you want to give it a go? Subscribe to Top 5s for more and check out some of our other popular videos.